Declan Hill, thank you so much for doing this. I think we're just going to jump right to it, right off the bat.
Yeah, absolutely. Good man.
Absolutely. I mean, no further ado. Are we back to 1919 and the World Series and Arnold Rothstein with what happened at the World Cup?
Look, I think there's a couple of things going on. I think we're in a Game of Thrones battle between billionaires to control the beautiful game. I think that is going to be, as you and I have spoken about both publicly and privately, that is the spirit of our time. These billionaires have come in and they've taken our jobs, they've taken our education, they've taken the opportunities of our children, they've sexually abused Jeffrey Epstein and people like them have abused women. And those billionaires have now come for football. They've now taken the credibility of the FIFA World Cup and they've made it a toy thing between various billionaire clans and families. So I think that's really the taste that has come from people after this last World Cup. Is that people may have enjoyed the exploits of the Swiss national team or whatever team you support, be it France or Canada or whatever. But really, our sport, the beautiful game, has really been exposed as being a toy thing for billionaires to try and come in and get more cash from.
But there is a significant pushback against Infantino, especially coming from Europe and South America, isn't it?
Not South America. South America is firmly, CONMEBOL is firmly on Infantino's side. I think the Game of Thrones, be it the Starks and the Lannisters, the Lannister side is Asia, including Qatar, which is so vast and has so much cash. It's a powerful weapon of Infantino. They backed him. Latin America has backed him. Who has not is Europe. The 55 nations of Europe have not. And CONCACAF, that's North America and the Caribbean. That's led by a Canadian, Victor Montagliani. And I think he's the silent ghost in the machine. He is the natural rival for Infantino. And I think you've heard it first, Pascal, here on our conversation. I think this maneuvers, this toes being put in the water, testing to see if a credible election campaign with this Canadian, who's the head of CONCACAF, can be mounted to challenge Infantino.
Well, which would be a very good thing, by the way, because I think that everybody's had it with him. At least in Europe, people just can't deal with him anymore. And then again, I mean, what? The Kushners? Really? The Kushner family? I mean, Jared Kushner and his investment fund, I believe the guy got something like close to $2 billion from the Saudis in 2020, and he has not since paid a single dime in dividends to its shareholder. That's just nuts.
Look, the Kushners are the closest you can come to organized crime without being organized crime.
That's pretty true. Or you could add Lutnick, you can have the Singer, you can have Besant, you can have a lot of people like that.
Yeah, but look, I'm not throwing this around. This isn't like, oh, here's my opinion. The father was convicted and put in jail for 2 years of financial fraud and witness tampering. And witness tampering is where, you know, the mob or whatever criminal goes to the jury during a trial and tries to either bribe them or threaten them not to convict the guy. So he was convicted of financial fraud and witness tampering. He served over 2 years in jail. And then Donald Trump pardons him and makes him U.S. ambassador to France.
Oh, we're happy. You have no idea.
like he's the father. And this shows you the kind of political influence the Kushner family has with Donald Trump, is that he's willing to say, hey, it's not a problem. Here, off you go to France and be the ambassador. That's the Kushners. That's the family that has brought all of Albania for the first time ever out onto the streets, protesting and fighting against them. The idea that Infantino would link the beautiful game with that particular family really shows how out of touch and out of tune Infantino is with the rest of the world. I agree with you. I think Infantino has had his 10 years of power. God bless you. Great. But it's time for you to go. And we need somebody else, some change to replace him.
But what's the current state of match rigging and fixing throughout the world currently? Did we see some major things during the Olympics? Did we see also some major things during the World Cup?
I know where
Are
you're
the
going, Pascal. You want me to talk about my irregular betting that we found at the University of New Haven during the World Cup.
Yes.
All right. And I hate talking about this. And
Okay.
listeners, let me explain to you the dance that Pascal and I are doing. So you understand. My research team at the University of New Haven discovered irregular bets at the World Cup. And that's fairly significant. That's fairly huge. But I hate writing it. I hate talking about it because just because a betting market has a huge move in it doesn't necessarily mean that there was fixing. There's all kinds of reasons why the market can move up and down in this way. So I hate writing about it. You guys all know that I've done a major investigation where I actually went and was able to uncover the lines of fixers coming out of Singapore, Malaysia, Thailand, over to Africa. There's a network of those guys that have been going to international sports tournaments for over 40 years now. This was confirmed from everyone from Sepp Blatter on to the individual players that this kind of stuff was going on at World Cups. I don't think that they've stopped. I think those match fixers still come to the World Cup. As I wrote for the Daily Telegraph in London, the reason why the fixers have such happy hunting ground at the World Cup, at these big international sports tournaments, is one reason. FIFA doesn't pay the players to play at these international tournaments. They're supposed to. Like, they genuinely budget money and send it off to the national football associations, all 48 of them. And the good ones, like Switzerland, like France, like Germany, have negotiations with their players as to how much each of the players gets during that World Cup. But some of the football associations just take the money, put it in their pocket, and hand the players a bunch of baffle gab. So you have players from the sub-Saharan African team, from many of the teams in Asia, running onto the field. Their players beside them and the other team are getting paid. The ball boy is getting paid. The stands are full with multi-$1,000 tickets for the seats. There's billions of dollars in sponsorship and broadcasting rights. And the players are thinking in their head, somebody's making an awful lot of money and it's not me. I'm one of the guys that's putting this on. And the fixers have known this now for decades, have been coming to the World Cups, and they've been reaching out to the players and contacting them. So were they at the last World Cup? Yes. Were they responsible for the odds movements that my team saw? Possibly. And as an investigative journalist, I hate using that word when I'm talking about a story, Pascal. One more thing that our listeners should know is the pool of money on the World Cup in terms of gambling is so enormous, it dwarfs any legal money that comes around the World Cup. So, for example, Gianni Infantino just announced at the end of this last 2026 World Cup that FIFA, according to him, had made a profit of $15 billion. So let's just assume that he underestimated that. I don't think he did. I think he's more likely to embellish and exaggerate. But let's just say it's 20. You know what? Let's just say it's $25 billion. The most conservative estimate that the gambling market will produce is that each game, all 104 games in the World Cup, have $1 billion bet on them. So the market, a credible estimation of the market starts at 100 billion. So that's 4 times Infantino's. Actually, it's more than 4 times. I've added 10 billion to Infantino's guesstimate. But the group of Copenhagen estimated it at 230 $34 billion. Now, again, let's suggest those guys are wrong, and it's half that. Even half of that money at $115 billion is still vastly larger than anything in the, quote, legal sports-related market. So you have two markets. One is quite small, and quite often it pays the players badly for doing their job well. They won't pay many of the players on some of those teams properly. But meanwhile, there's this huge multi-hundreds of billion-dollar gambling market, and there are people inside that gambling market that are quite willing to pay people very well to do their job badly, i.e. fix the games. So were there fixes at the World Cup? Yes. Were there irregular betting patterns on many of the games? Yes, there was certainly. We saw 3 games that raised our eyebrows considerably, and we thought somebody has got to investigate these games. There's something weird about these games. Could be innocent explanation, but there's a weirdness about them. The group of Copenhagen, as I mentioned, was following the prediction markets, and so there were at least 12 bets that had suspicious problems around them. So we got a problem. FIFA, as we began this conversation by saying, is an organization almost without credibility now, and somebody should be investigating it, but nobody is.
Well, possibly because of all the money at stake, and possibly also because, sports event like the World Cup is more or less the only way I would call that linear television today can survive.
I think there's another factor, Pascal. I think you're absolutely right. But there is another factor which I don't think has quite may not be so clear in France and Switzerland, where our listeners and viewers are. And that is that Donald Trump is hugely unpopular now. I know among the chattering class and among the journalist class, there's always been this contempt and disrespect for Infantino, but it's been marked very much by a large segment of the American population which believes in Donald Trump. But since the Iran war on March 1st, his popularity has been dropping like an elevator in free fall. And the reason why that's significant in this particular conversation is because the FBI is supposed to be in charge of the sports integrity of the FIFA World Cup in America. No FBI investigator is going to raise their hand and say there may have been a problem in this 2026 World Cup. Donald Trump's presidency, his very hold on power, depended in part on that World Cup being a, quote, success.
Which he hasn't been, by the way.
Maybe not in Europe, but in America, among his base, it's played not badly. But it would certainly stop if there were a suspicion of an FBI investigation. And unfortunately, the FBI is now a deeply politicized organization. Donald Trump is right now charged the former head of the FBI, James Comey, with all kinds of criminal problems because Comey took a photograph of a couple of rocks on a beach. So that's the kind of political nature of the FBI, the organization that's tasked with protecting the sports integrity of the World Cup. And remember, in November, if the Democrats take control of the House of Representatives, which they're supposed to do now, the way polls are, and the Senate, which they possibly can do.
They may then Donald Trump will have no other choice but to resign to avoid trial and possibly prison.
There's a whole series of impeachment trials being promised. So we'll see. But that is the context to understand why nobody will investigate irregular betting patterns or these issues around this 2026 World Cup. You would be career suicide for an FBI investigator to open a trial or, open a case like that in this tournament.
Thank God in Europe, binary options like polymarket or all prediction market are strictly forbidden. Sales to consumer, at least they're being considered as complex financial products can be sold to banks and other financial institutions. But otherwise, when it comes to match fixing, and there is the infamous example I've quoted right at the beginning, the 1919 World Series was fixed by Arnold Rothstein, which was the inventor of the American organized crime. We can say that because he was also the mentor of Lucky Luciano and of Majewski, as far as I remember. Good guys.
And look, they wrote The Great Gatsby about Arnold Rothstein.
That's
he
correct.
was the guy not mentioned in The Great Gatsby, but it's all about Arnold
Rothstein. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, and he got shot, I guess, after a poker game where he lost $200,000 or whatever. He was a mobster anyway, a Jewish mob to call it like it is. But when it comes to match fixing, I mean, most of the time, doesn't it occur just like I would say fixing horse races on low stake games? Isn't that where not most of the market, but most of the money that can be extracted by fixers can be done?
No, match fixing occurs across sport because you can make a huge amount of money on fixing a World Cup game. So what happens is that there are lots of organizations that monitor the betting on games and sports. And if you were to fix a second division game in the Swiss Ice Hockey League, it would show up fairly quickly that there was something weird going on. And you couldn't really make a lot of money on the Swiss Ice Hockey League if you're going to fix there. Or the, the Byelorussian Table Tennis League, or the Maltese Water Polo League. I mentioned those because there have been issues with them. The World Cup is like a perfect storm. You have underpaid players. You have some players that get zero for playing in the World Cup, and their money is being stolen by the presidents of their football federations, and you get huge amounts of money. And so one of the reasons why our research team was so shocked to see irregular betting, it was really almost the first time we've ever seen it, is that if you're going to move the market in a World Cup game, you're talking tens of millions of dollars. And there's no doubt that someone somewhere made tens of millions of dollars on these bets. Now, whether they were innocent information or they just happened to get the information right, we don't know. But it is absolutely clear that somebody came in with an enormous amount of money and was able to move the liquidity, was able to move that market in a massive, massive way.
Well, if someone came in with an enormous sum of money, there's a name for it. And that's called insider trading. I mean, just like on the stock market, we've seen that with oil, with the war in Iraq. We've even seen, I believe, one of Trump's kids, I think it was Eric, who asked if the MMA fights were rigged, for the White House lawn stuff. I mean, that was just crazy, by the way, to see this tweet. I mean, come on. I mean,
yeah, look, 2 points there. One is I'm desperately holding on to the credibility among your listeners and viewers. I have tremendous respect. I get a number of your guys through your recommendation every week. There's 2 or 3 of your listeners who come over and follow me. So I've got tremendous respect for them. So I don't want to say an irregular betting move is necessarily insider trading. You're absolutely right. It could be. It could be match fixing.
If you got tens of millions coming in, usually, I mean, unless they need some kind of layering or smurfing, to use the money laundering term, I mean, you know who the well is. Just like in a casino.
Pascal, you can make that jump. I'm not. You can make the jump, brother.
Okay.
I'm not. I want your listeners and viewers to know that I'm holding on to credibility, because I don't want to drift into that paranoid world of a bettor. I've never met a bettor who lost a bet because they were stupid. They always come up with some complex plot. They always come up with stuff. So when I'm working with my research team and my research colleagues, I'm really skeptical. And so there were many other things that were going on in this World Cup. And it only took, I said, I'm only taking these 3 because these 3 games are so weird. There's so much weird stuff going on around them in the betting market that these should be examined and these should be investigated. Everything else, well, whatever, we'll just skip over them. Group of Copenhagen was more liberal in their analysis, and there were 12 bets that they thought should be investigated. One point that I wanted to pick up on is the effect of prediction markets over here in North America, just to give you guys a taste of our lives.
Yeah, because we don't have any clue what it's about here.
It is the casinofication. It's turning everything in our lives into a casino. And it's a weird, weird world. I had a friend who went to a wedding this last weekend, and they were taking prediction market bets on how long the wedding speeches would be. So here you are at a wedding, and they're like, oh, by the way, if you go to blah, 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 and punch in, you can make a bet is the wedding speech is going to be 10 minutes or 15 or 20. So, even in these micro little minor things, Americans are being encouraged to turn their everyday life into a casino, into a betting world.
That's scary.
Yeah.
I mean, fentanyl and gambling addiction. Where is this country going? I mean,
I think you've again, Pascal, you hit the issue on the head. My next book is about exactly that subject. Many of our colleagues, particularly in sports integrity, are obsessed with illegal gambling and illegal betting. I'm not anymore, because what we're seeing is a new product, and that product is the danger. It's not the placement of the product. It's not whether it's in Costa Rica or the Philippines or America or Paris or Geneva. It's that social media mixed with online gambling has created a deeply addictive product. And much of our politicians, wherever they are in the world, still think in old terms. They still think of, oh, when you place a bet, you go to a casino, or you go to the horse races, or you even go to a cheap bar and you meet some guy called, I don't know, Luigi at the back of the bar, and you place your bet. That's not the way gambling is done now. Gambling is done just clicking little buttons on your phone. And the same people that made social media addictive have turned their attention to sports gambling. And it's deeply addictive, and it is ruining societies, cities, towns, communities across North America. Is deeply, deeply addictive, and very few people are talking about it.
What do you think is going to happen then? Because, I mean, we see also with AI, there is, the big guys, for instance, there is a call for regulation, and it will have to have some form of regulation. Because it's good. Otherwise, you won't be able to have a decent market without any rules. Don't you think that this will come to an end? Because we're seeing a lot. We're seeing, for instance, the whole Trump family cryptocurrency business, which is linked, by the way, to some betting platforms and stuff like that.
Yes.
It is going to be regulated sooner or later, don't you think? Especially after the midterms?
I can't talk about Europe. You are the expert there. North America, it will not be regulated. Not anytime soon. The difference between the mainstream Democrats and the Trumpian Republicans is about like that on a number of these issues. It's really, really difficult to get difference between many of the mainstream Democrats and the Republicans on this. And Trump is the casino magnate turned U.S. president. He loves his gambling. Howard Lutnick, who's his Secretary of Commerce, the guy who was so infamously connected and lied about his connections with Jeffrey Epstein, is the guy who's supposed to be regulating this kind of stuff. He was a big executive in the gambling world as well. So there's not going to be any serious regulation.
By the Adelson, so is Rubio also.
Exactly.
I mean, Adelson,
so there's not going to...
They operate casinos in Macau, and no, we don't do money laundering.
Look, that's part of, not to give away the whole secret of my next book, but that's part of the next book, which is the close links between, quote, legal operators and illegal operators, which is why I think my colleagues have got this story so badly wrong. But I don't think there'll be any regulation in North America. Here's why. Canada is essentially a colony. It's my country, but it's a colony of America. They won't do anything until the Americans do something. The Americans won't do anything until Donald Trump is kicked out. And then there's a battle for the soul of the Democratic Party going on now between the mainstream guys, who are really not all that different from Donald Trump, and the new guys who are rising up on the ashes of Bernie Sanders, the Mamdani mayor in New York, the, quote, Democratic socialists. They may be able to overturn this. They may be able to bring regulations, and they may be able to do some changes. But I don't think they're going to have their hands on real power for at least another 3-4 years.
So the outlook is pretty bleak.
At least here in North America. I don't know what French politics is like. I don't know what Swiss politics is like.
You know, I'm French, and I'm not based in
Yeah,
Switzerland. But I was born in Switzerland, but I'm not.
yeah.
Anyway, but no, French politics. Oh, don't get me started. It's a bloody mess. Anyway, it's at least as bad as in the US. But we don't
Is
have
it the same kind of Pascal? Is it the same kind of political theater? So our
yes.
politicians in North America, be they Canadian or American, aren't really politicians. They're not really interested in regulation or expanding. They're just little actors jumping up and down.
That's exactly the same.
To conceal the agenda of the billionaire class. So
Yeah, no,
to
no,
get to
yeah.
your point about AI,
Yeah, that's exactly the same thing in France. But now these people are squeezed, just like in the US, between on one hand,
yes,
you've got the new left wing,
yes,
which is embodied by Jean-Luc Mélenchon, and you've got the National Rally, which is more conservative, what's say new conservatives, embodied by Marine Le Pen, which are not like that, but all the rest is. It's exactly the same thing, and most of the decisions anyway today are being taken in Brussels, not in Paris anymore. So very few people still support. I mean, we all had it with that.
I think if you can indulge me and please listeners
Yeah, sure.
indulge me, I think the real breakthrough is when the democratic socialists wake up. They're going to drop their ridiculous social debates about who wears a skirt and who doesn't wear a skirt and all this kind of stuff, and they reach out to the disaffected right-wing working class voters who've had their jobs exported to China. And there's a real link up between the extremes of the left and the right, and they bring themselves together to say, hey, we're in charge of community. We want good communities. We want good societies. We don't care about these social issues that are used to divide us. I think that is the hope.
They're going to have a lot of competition with people like Thomas Massey and Marjorie Taylor Greene or Tucker Carlson. We clearly see that some things going on on the. I wouldn't call that the right because it's not. But it's the right because it's conservative.
It is exactly the right. That's exactly the correct word. It's the conservative movement. Yes,
it's the conservative movement. That's what the Tea Party was about, by the way. I mean, if you look at it, and we see that rising, and it's pretty interesting. I mean, I've been postulating for quite some time now that situation is so bad in the US that we may see finally the end of bipartisanism. A third path may rise because, quite frankly, I don't see the people who have voted for Donald Trump and who were betrayed by Donald Trump keep on voting Republican in the same way that I don't see disenfranchised Democratic voters voting for the mainstream Republicans. I mean, the Clinton, Obama stream, or strain, as I will call them. So no, it's pretty fascinating, and it's more or less the same thing in France and Germany. We have a system which has come to its end. That's the 20th century who refuses to die, I believe. That's what it is. But anyway, okay. Anyway,
right now, do you want me to keep talking about sports today? Because I think these are the great issues of the time.
No.
Go back to the theme that we began.
Go back to sport. Now, what are the key main issue for, say, the next coming years, according to you?
I think there's two. I mean, there's obviously many more, but there's two which I'm an expert. One is the Game of Thrones issue around here. I think, as I was saying at the beginning of the program, this shuffling, it's very much like the battle between sharks. You're not going to see it on the surface, but underneath, there are all kinds of people, all kinds of phone calls and emails and conversations going on. If UEFA and CONCACAF can bring forward a candidate, a successful candidate to Infantino, and frankly, I just think an open election would be a great thing for Infantino's FIFA. There hasn't been that. There hasn't been proper debate. There hasn't been real openness in that organization. And the second thing is that I think sports leagues, wherever they are in the world, have to look at the gambling industry, the one that has dominated our conversation, and say, how do we get cash from that industry? They're placing their bets on our sports, our events, without compromising the integrity of that. And Djokovic, the former great, I mean, he's still a tennis player, but the great tennis player, was fighting hard this exact issue over the last year. He failed, but it was a very good idea to take 50% of the betting money and give it directly to the players. Just take it and say, listen, let's increase all the salaries of
to the teams,
players.
not to the players, but to the teams at least.
At least get the cash in there and get that money, but have a clear blue line between it. Just as we were talking about politics and these new waves of politics, there has been a time when we faced similar things in sports integrity. In the 1890s, across the Western world, there was huge, rampant gambling, and it was destroying sports, be it archery, be it pedestrianism, be it professional rowing. The great sports of that time up and down the Seine River was rowing. That's what it was. And there was so much gambling going on. There was so much corruption going on that 6 men met in the restaurant in Paris and they said, qu'est-ce qu'on peut faire? C'est ridicule. Qu'est-ce qui se passe ici maintenant avec les sports? And from those questions, from that one meeting in a Paris restaurant, the Olympic movement was born. Coubertin and those guys were motivated on how to beat the gambling market. We've forgotten that. We've forgotten that the birth of the International Olympic movement comes specifically in the fight against what a widespread rampant gambling organization was doing to sports in that time. And look at the success of the International Olympic movement. So I think it's time now that we find our new Coubertin. We find the new innovator. We find the new original person to look at this corruption, look at this collusion, look at this massive market and say, okay, how do we build a new way of thinking about sports? This is the time to do it.
Well, will they do that? Because corruption is so important and the money involved is so huge. We even see that the IOC, I mean, is notoriously corrupt. We know that.
Look, the IOC is now, 135 years old. I believe that we've come very, very close to seeing the end of credibility of a number of sports. We've seen the Italian leagues, wither down. Their Italian football league is a disaster now. They haven't qualified for the World Cup now for 3 goes in a row. The Turks, God bless them, have really taken this to heart. And have investigated and discovered the wide, rampant match fixing and international betting rings inside their teams, inside their referees, and are really trying to pull it out. But I think professional sport has a major, major series of issues, and there will be a number of massive scandals in the next couple of years. The amount of addiction, gambling addiction among professional athletes is just it's just through the roof. It's the new plague. And yes, it's going to be a tough battle, just as it is in the political world. But I think that there's going to be new organizations and new institutions that will arise in the next 5 to 10 years.
Because, I mean, taking 50% of all bets, or taxing, bets by 50% is basically what is done in France with the National Lottery. And all scratch games, stuff like that, is being done. Okay, good, it's elective, but guess what? Whatever is being bet, anyway, the house always win. That's the point. Okay, otherwise, no one is getting involved in gambling. Okay, the bookmaker, the house, or the bank always win. So, well, just take 50% tax it, and then fund it back to fund sports, just like it's being done with broadcasting rights, TV broadcasting rights. I mean, they've been auctioned off, and then it's most of the money is getting then paid back to clubs participating to the specific championship. That could be an idea. But
look, I'm working with a couple of American politicians at the moment in Washington because we're having this argument. I don't think they'll win now, but we're setting out the blueprint for when that great sports scandal is going to happen and people are looking around. And I think we really need a third-party agency, a national agency in whatever country, be it France, America, wherever, that collects the money from the gambling industry and then distributes it throughout sport. So there's a clear blue line between the sports leagues and the sports athletes over here and the bookmakers and the gambling market. There's something in the middle, and there's a regulatory agency that collects the money and then distributes it to the sports, and also does the kind of work that the University of New Haven does and monitors the gambling market in these big international tournaments, and just says, oh, the World Cup, we've got 12 irregular betting patterns. We're not sure what's going on. Somebody should be investigating that. In the French league, after the course of the entire season, we're seeing 80 irregular matches going on. Somebody needs to investigate that. In the English Premier League, it's 15, so that the people have a sense of the credibility of these sports leagues, and they can make decisions, sponsors, fans, whoever, bettors, on the credibility of these sports. But we really need these third-party agencies, and we need those corporatons, those baron corporatons, to invent those agencies now.
Yeah, but since gambling is also so easy, it's so practical and so efficient for money laundering, well, let's face it, I don't see people like the Adelson, and because casinos also operate their own booking, their own sports gambling platforms, etc. I really hardly see, even in France, I mean, most of the people, I mean, we've got some oligarchs that were just got filthy rich. I'm thinking about Stéphane Courbit, for instance, online gambling and online poker, online casinos.
Yeah.
That's going to be, well, we're going to have to take these people down first, I believe, in something that will be close to what was done with the mob in the 80s and 90s. I mean, we need a new Coubertin and a new Rudy Giuliani. Maybe.
I don't see that at this moment. It is the gambling industry is deeply entrenched, and it's deeply entrenched as well in a way that I'm not sure if it's deeply entrenched in Europe. It's deeply entrenched in American media. So I'm a Canadian, and most of the Canadian media have links with bookmakers. So it's very difficult for me to get my work published or broadcast in Canada, because so many of the editors are looking at it, and they'll have private conversations with me and say, hey, Dec, would love to do it. It seems like a great story, but that's going to really irritate our owners, who are also bookmakers, or our chief sponsors that are also bookmakers. So we have massive conflicts of interest inside our media world here in North America.
Not the case in Europe, at least not in France at all. No, it's not the case. But again, anyway, thank you so much, Declan, for your time.
It's an honor, Pascal. Please, if anybody wants to continue looking at my work, come over to see me in Crime Waves. The one thing I do, which I think Pascal and I have not talked about for a number of years now, is that myself and my students did an investigation of what happened to Jeffrey Epstein in that New York jail. Mm-hmm. I would maintain that because I'm Canadian, because I have no agenda, it's probably the best independent investigation of what actually happened to Epstein.
Yeah, it is. And at least it's the most well documented, the most precise, and the most. It is definitely.
And just to foreshadow, we've got a big expose coming up in the next couple of weeks. Some really interesting news on that particular story. Stay tuned. Pascal, thank you so much. And it's always an honor to speak to you.
It's a pleasure too. Thank you so much, Declan.